This is a continuation of yesterday's video in which we were examining the first of the pakashos that we add to the Shemona Esrei during the Asher Semei Tshuva. The questions that I want to focus on today, slightly different than the way I ended yesterday, are what are we asking for when we say recall us for life, King who desires life, and what are we asking for when we say write us in the book of life? What book is this, and what does it mean to be written in the book of life? And then why are we saying this during the Asher Semei Tshuva? So we said yesterday, quick review, we tend to assume that we're talking about the book of life that we're written in if we're tzaddikim on Rosh Hashanah, or that we hope to be written in on Yom HaKippurim if we are meritorious of it. That's like the Rebbe Yakar says, that this is about Rosh Hashanah. Now, Abudirham doesn't mention Rosh Hashanah at all, but he does identify the book. He says that we're asking God to recall us because everyone is recalled in a book, as it says in Malachi, that a book of remembrance was written before him. So we looked at that in context. Oh, sorry, there's one thing I forgot to mention yesterday, which is, this is Abudirham commenting on the phrase Zochreinu l'chaim, but then on the phrase Kasveinu b'sefer ha'chaim, what book is it talking about? The exact same book in Melachi. So we're asking God to recall us in the book that he wrote us in, and we're asking God to write us in that very same book. So what is this book? So we read through the Psukim in Melachi. We saw that the book was written for those who fear Hashem and think into his name, and that the book is relevant on not the Yom Hadin of Rosh Hashanah, but on the Yom HaMishpat, the day of judgment, at the advent of Yemos HaMashiach. On that day which I will bring about, the day is coming, on that day Hashem will make. So let's look at the Radak. So the Radak explains and says, God listened to their words, the words of those who fear him, and he gave them a reward for this. Now, how did this come about? Because a book of remembrance was written before him. This is by way of allegory, in human terms, that kings write a book of remembrances. For there's no forgetting before him, exalted is he, meaning God doesn't forget. Likewise, the phrase in Shemos, from your book which you have written, for everything in existence is written in a book. So, what is this book of remembrance? It's the book of remembrance that kings write, and we're familiar with this from Megillas Esther, when Mordechai saved Achashverosh's life by informing on Bigsan and Seresh, and his good deed was written in a book and then forgotten about, and then later on, Achashverosh was looking through the book of Zochreinu, and he saw Mordechai's deed and realized he was never rewarded, and he recalled him for life, meaning he recalled him in order to give him a reward. So that's really the book we're talking about here. And the Radak goes on to explain this consistent with the Psukim. He says, those who fear Hashem and think into his name, that the prophets mentioned, those people are preserved forever, meaning the record of their merit is written in the book, and then they are rewarded at a future date. Radak goes on, they will be for me a treasure, says Hashem. The people in this generation who fear Hashem will be resurrected at the resurrection of the dead. Right? That's when they're being recalled for, along with those who fear Hashem in that generation. On that day which I bring about, on that Yom HaMishpat, on that day of judgment, on which I will enact judgment against the wicked, those who fear Hashem, will be a treasure for me, etc., etc. They won't be destroyed. You'll see the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha. So now we're in a position to understand the Abudirham. So we're saying two things. Recall us for life, using the Sefer Zikaron, the book of remembrances, and then we're asking him to write us in the book of Zichronos. Okay, now, recall us for life, what that means based on this analogy is, again, just like Achashverosh recalled Mordechai in order to reward him, so too we're asking Hashem, recall us based on the actions that you wrote down in this book in order to reward us l'chaim, with life. Okay, and whether you say that life means literal being alive, whether you say it means brachos and all good things, whether you say it means life in olam haba, really, we don't really know what the Abudirham's interpretation of that is, and it really doesn't concern us here. All of them are true as far as we're concerned, okay? So that's clear what we're asking for. We're asking God to recall us for life based on the deeds that were written in the book. And that's something, as we know, is up to God's judgment, that just because you do something good and it's written down, so to speak, doesn't mean that that's going to automatically result in a good judgment, because that's up to how God weighs your actions, right? Like the Rama mentions, one zechus, one merit can outweigh lots of avonos, lots of iniquities, and vice versa. So that's up to God to weigh. But then we say, write us, inscribe us for life, and it's the same book of life. So the problem with this on the surface is, who's the only one who can write us for life? Us, ourselves, right? If this is the book that records all of our actions, then we're the ones who are writing it down. So how can we ask God to help us, to inscribe us for life? So I think it must mean that, yes, it's up to us, but we want God to assist us in living a life that is worth being recorded for the good. So in other words, this two-part bakasha here, recall us for life, is really our objective. We want to be remembered based on our actions for good. But then in order to do that, we have to specify the means, which is write us for life, which means help us, give us assistance in order to be able to do actions which merit being recorded in a way that will lead us to being recalled for life. Now, the next video in the series will examine the second and fourth clause of this bakasha, and then we'll put it all together in the end.